Honored guests, it is with great pleasure that we welcome you to the Skopje Economic and Finance Forum on the second annual conference of the Ministry of Finance of the Republic of North Macedonia. Sustaining growth in times of uncertainty and beyond. For the official opening, we're inviting to the stage the host of the conference, the Minister of Finance of the Republic of North Macedonia, Mr. Fatmir Besimi.
Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Kovacevski, distinguished Vice President of the World Bank, Ms. Ana Bierde, distinguished Deputy Prime Ministers, Ministers, Governors from our country and from the region, dear Professor Krugman, distinguished representatives from the business and academic community in the country and in the region, distinguished representatives of the media from our country and from the region, and international media as well. Dear guests, your presence at the Skopje Economic and Finance Forum is a great honor for us. I must emphasize that this is a great pleasure to see that Seff is growing into a platform for exchanging ideas, shaping policies which will last much longer than these 2 days of the conference. I also would like to thank all of you present here, the distinguished and excellencies, the ambassadors of countries in our country, of other countries like EU member states, United States, and other friendly countries being with us through these days. Dear guests, Seff is an initiative of the Ministry of Finance, which is aiming to contribute to the public policy debate in the country and the region through annual conferences, seminars, and a portal of analysis and discussions. This initiative is based on principles of transparency, diversity, and inclusiveness. It means an open dialogue with all stakeholders that will contribute to shaping the future policies and measures, and thus more efficient and effective implementation of the common interests such as economic recovery and comprehensive and accelerated and inclusive growth and green economic growth in a new era of digitalization. I expect that Seff will encourage new partnerships, new projects, and will contribute to building and advancing economic strategies. Seff today is attended by ministers from the region, high representatives of the international financial institutions, ambassadors, international renowned professors, academics, representatives of the business community, members of the parliament, and as well as non-governmental sector and youth. I take this opportunity also to thank colleagues, former ministers of finance from our country, for their contribution to the program of this conference. We have all the stakeholders in this conference today to address the question on how to sustain growth in times of uncertainty and beyond. We know that crisis brings us a lot of challenges in short term, but we should keep the focus on medium and long term, on our vision and our future. Dear guests, for the past 2 years, the world and the economy have been constantly facing with the new shocks and temptations. This is maybe the new normality, living on crisis after crisis. First was the pandemic, the deepest recession since the World War II, which is coming after the financial crisis of a decade ago. Aftershocks of this crisis came in the form of disrupted supply chains, rising prices of primary products, and especially food and energy, and tightening financial markets conditions. Additionally, there is the war in Ukraine, a shock of different nature, in a loss on the humanity aspects, but also on economic terms. And this also has acted as a catalyst of uncertainty and increase of growth, increase of commodity prices, additional supply chain disruptions, and growing investors and consumption caution. Also, pandemic threats are still present. The world economy is facing a multiple crises at once, not just one after the other one. The crisis caused by COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the economic and financial system have become more resilient since the global financial crisis. Policymakers were also quicker to respond. Fiscal authorities, through strong stimulus in many economies, have managed to dampen the impact of COVID-19. On the other hand, the adjustable monetary policy provided the necessary additional liquidity in the economy to maintain economic activity and jobs. Now, the conditions are different. From international markets' point of view, commodity prices have spilled over into the national economies, in ours as well. Aside from rising prices, some of the things we need to worry about are also trade, investments, and consumption. Some central banks have already tightened or are announcing tightening of monetary policy. This means that the price of financial capital will increase. And what are the next steps? Dear friends, when we face these challenges and we need to sustain and build houses, we usually start with pillars, and then we build the structure. For this conference, and to set the debate, we launched 4 pillars for debate and discussion. The first one is, what are the macroeconomic challenges in turbulent times? The second is how to remain resilient, competitive, and in the meantime to improve regional connectivity. The third is about what are the challenges posed by the green transition, where investments in energy infrastructure should be directed. And the fourth one is what are the reforms that needed to be implemented to further in order to maintain and encourage growth. Actually, what are and what will be the growth drivers in the future. These are the issues that we will talk about in the next 2 days and exchange experiences and ideas and solutions. I expect a debate, exchange of opinions, solutions for each one of us here. And to our great satisfaction, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have today with us Professor Paul Krugman, who joined us at this Seff conference for 2022. And I look forward to hearing his views, as we do all here, about the current situations and the next steps and prospects. The audience who are here will have the opportunity to address questions to the Seff's Twitter account. I think you already will have them, which is @Seff_MK. And also I welcome all of you to post or tweet your views and comments on the topics that are discussed during the conference in these 2 days. And in addition to the Twitter account of the conference, you just had our sign as #Seff for your posts. Once again, dear colleagues, friends, guests, I want to thank you all for being part of the forum and for contributing to the discussion with your knowledge and expertise as to healing and a sustainable and accelerated growth for us in the future. Dear participants, without you, this conference could not happen. Thank you. And now, please allow me, I would like to invite our Prime Minister, Mr. Kovachevsky, to officially open this conference. Thank you for your support, Prime Minister. The floor is yours.
Почитуван министер за финансии.
Dear Minister of Finance, Mr. Bessini, I would like first to thank the Minister of Finance and the whole team. that for the second time they are organizing the Skopje Economic Finance Forum. Now with a lot of guests, we do not have limitations due to the virus, considering that at this point there are no COVID measures. What we also planned with the first summit, with the first conference, to have the highest profile of a person we managed this year to invite the guest, according to all opinions, the most influential economist in the world at this point is Professor Paul Krugman, which gives additional value to this economic and finance forum.
Почитувани високи гости,
Dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear media, it's an honor and a privilege to open the second international conference, Skopje Economic Finance Forum. 1 year after initiating it, this forum came up to be the most important forum in the sphere of economy and finance as a platform for discussion on economic and financial topics. Last year, it was initiated by the Ministry of Finance, the Skopje Economic Finance Forum. This year, on one place, this forum gathers the most representative names of the stakeholders of the international financial institutions, most influential institutions in the world, the European Union in the region, and representatives of the academia and scientific institutions of the country and the world. I wish you welcome and success. This year we have the participation of Professor Krugman, winner of the Nobel Prize in 2008, with which this forum is placing high standards, and it grows into a significant event of the region and in Europe in general. I am convinced that you will contribute to the topic of this forum, sustaining growth in times of uncertainty and beyond. I believe that we will have important recommendations about macroeconomic challenges in the future and creation of fiscal and monetary policies, additional directions to focus the policies for building sustainable, resilient, and competitive economy through structural reforms, as well as tackling the energy crisis and orientation to green economy, digitalization, strengthening the human capital, sustainable and innovative financial system. For us, for the government and the Ministry of Finance, it will be of exceptional importance to hear your opinions, analysis, recommendations, and also step forward to apply them in the processes of creation of future policies in this turbulent time. It's a truly honor for me to lead the government of the Republic of North Macedonia in this time of crisis. In a very uncertain times, the government is putting efforts to tackle the challenges and the consequences of the aggression of the war in Ukraine. We bear very difficult decisions in order to protect citizens, the standard of living, their income, and the liquidity of the companies. In my address, I will talk about the key measures that the government implemented to mediate the consequences and the priorities and measures that we undertake short-term and long-term to the first measure is protection, the standard of the most vulnerable categories of citizens and maintaining the liquidity of the companies. The second is the sustainable economic growth, a long-term support of the growth of production and increasing inclusivity. The third set of measures is increasing the gross investments, the investments that are dominantly come from the state budget, but also the private investments and FDIs as the generators for the economic growth of the country on a medium term. According to these priorities, these days we adopted the amendments to the budget related to the macroeconomic challenges as a reaction to the new geopolitical developments and the effects of the domestic economy. We prepared a timely and adequate response to the most important issues, and we adapted the measures. We defined favorable sources of funding for the crisis and maintaining the fiscal sustainability. We also guarantee a regular payments of the pensions, of the salaries, and other needs of the citizens, servicing the obligations of liabilities of the country. The rebalancing of the budget is a responsibility to the citizens, the economy, and accelerating the need for consolidation and sustaining the economy by forecasting the reforms. This approach on a short term provides for servicing our priorities, protecting the living standard of the citizens, especially for the vulnerable categories, liquidity of the companies, and making favorable conditions for economic growth. On a medium term, in combination with the internationally recognized anti-crisis measures for tackling the energy and price crisis and fiscal consolidation, enticing economic activity through capital expenditures, improving the business environment and creation of new jobs, we are creating a basis for accelerating the economic growth. Although it is not sure, we are expecting stabilization of the global supply chains and a more favorable environment for investing. Part of the results that we are expecting on a medium term is increasing competitiveness, economic stability, green transition and infrastructure, digitalization, investing in the human capital, and increasing the productivity as a driver for sustainable growth. After the crisis, the rate of inflation was 7.2% on an annual level. Again, in context of the expectations for the inflation movements in the Eurozone and calculating the effect, the spillover effect in our country. According to the expectations of the international financial institutions for the second half of the year, we are prognosing stabilization of the prices, and I would like to hear the comments, your comments in the part of expectations of the inflation developments by Professor Krugman. With the stabilization of the pressure and normalization of the supply chains and implementing the governmental plan for recovering from the crisis, we are prognosing that the economic growth on a medium term will be accelerating. The economic growth for this year was projected to 3.2%, which is a decrease for 1.4 percentage points of the prognosis for the budget 2022. These projections are according to the latest projections of the International Monetary Fund, and we are expecting that the demand will be the main driver of growth, where the private consumption is projected to 3.3% in 2023. We are projecting a growth on 4.5%, 24 for 4.7, and so on. Incremental growth. The share of the growth is the growth also with the net salary growth of 11%. Also, in these conditions, we are providing growth of the average net salary that, according to the statistics, reached 500 euros. This is due to the growth of the minimum wage and the increase of the wages in the educational sector and other sectors, such as the IT sector and telecommunications sector. The rate of unemployment is expected to reduce with projection of 14.5% for this year. And on a medium term, the expectation is to be 8.2% in 2027. When we expect increase of the rate of employment to 4.7%. At this point, unemployment is on the historical lowest level, 15.2%. In this segment, I would like to share with you the policies of the capital investments in FDIs. Capital expenditures are planned on a level of 32 billion dinners, $6 billion lower than the plan for 2022. I will point out that with the capital investments for this year, they're on a record level, 8.8 billion dinners, or 37.8% increase compared to the last year, or 16 billion dinners, 2 times increased. The mechanism CAPEF that we introduced monitors the realization, and where we have the low dynamics, we reallocate funds in the institutions that show a great realization of capital investments. We are also planning investments in the road infrastructure, corridor 910. In the railway infrastructure, we are planning to invest the 3 phases of construction of rehabilitation of the east part of the railway Corridor 8 and the part towards Bulgaria, and providing funding for the project for railway Kichevo to the Albanian border. With the gasification, we are planning to build the pipelines between North Macedonia and Greece, and also to Serbia and Kosovo. We are planning a lot other capital investments in the field of education and childcare, health, protection of the environment, and waste management. The list is long, the agenda is ambitious, and for its realization we are planning $500 million euros, and keeping in contact with the foreign investments at this time is of crucial importance. The pandemic showed the weaknesses, and we saw that Europe faced a lot of challenges when the supply chains is far away. Europe can produce a lot of things, and it means saving. North Macedonia will use this, and we are making a climate for new investments. We are a member of NATO. Our position and membership in the European Union is making a favorable climate for foreign investments, which is an advantage for our country. In order to strengthen competitiveness, to attract investors, our efforts are directed to sustaining a favorable business environment. Today, we're not talking about competitive salaries. We also focusing on improving the infrastructure, rule of law, and human capital, and also capitalization of the educational system. Our system for attracting investments has changed, and now we are directed to investors that bring greater added value. As such, we can see the big infrastructure investment as a windmill park, construction of the solar station from the French investor, which is our strategic direction for energy transformation of the country. In the surrounding where energy crisis prevents growth, it's our priority with the structural reforms. We are creating possibilities to continue the cooperation, not only with the current but also potential foreign investors. This approach yields results with the new agreements for new investments. In the last 18 months, we increased the number of potential investors that approach the Directorate for Technological and Investment Zones, and also increasing the capacities by the current investors. The investors and potential investors recognize the new concept of tiers introduced in 2021. The current companies in these zones, 10 of them open new capacities with new investors. The negotiations, we are talking about investments of €500 million, and they come from the sectors of pharmacy, energy, IT, and services. According to the data of the National Bank, there is a increasing tendency of investments in the country. Last year, direct FDIs of €500 million, 512 million euros, 2020 in 201 million euros. Dear guests, I will end my address directing your attention to the geopolitical context where Macedonia is tackling the security, financial, and energy situation. North Macedonia takes care of the European values, and we are building good neighborly relations necessary for prosperity and better standard for the citizens. Our country fulfilled all conditions for the start of negotiations according to the chapters for membership in the European Union, which is undoubtedly confirmed by most of the members of the European Union. NATO membership means security and safety, but it opened also economic development possibilities, and also we're expecting the accession process of our country in European. The war in Ukraine showed that expansion of Europe is a security issue of the region and the European Union. The European Union is our main trade partner, and most of the foreign direct investments come from Europe and the North American continent. North Macedonia and the whole Balkan is of primary importance for the region and the European Union. EU integration of Western Balkans is useful, mutually useful process. North Macedonia cooperates with the countries of the neighbors, movement of goods, capital and services, new investments, greater market mobility, and development of businesses in the region. All of this means better standard for the people and quality of life. Our objective is economically strong region, developed the Western Balkan and integrated in the European Union. Thank you for your attention. I wish you fruitful work on this forum. Also, congratulations to the organizers. Thank you.